Imagine a world where the most devastating conflict in human history never occurred. Where 60 million lives weren't lost, where the Holocaust never happened, and where the entire trajectory of the 20th century took a completely different path. What if World War II simply never existed? The ripple effects would be so profound that our world today would be virtually unrecognizable. Every piece of technology you use, every political system you live under, and even the very borders of countries would be fundamentally different. Today, we're diving deep into this alternate timeline to explore how history would have changed forever if the Second World War had never erupted. But before we journey into this alternate reality, we need to understand what would have prevented this global catastrophe from happening in the first place. The most likely scenario involves Germany never falling into the economic desperation that allowed Adolf Hitler to rise to power. Perhaps the Treaty of Versailles was less harsh, or maybe the Great Depression never hit Europe as severely. Without these conditions, Hitler's Nazi Party might have remained a fringe political movement, never gaining the popular support needed to seize control of Germany. In this alternate timeline, the Weimar Republic could have stabilized by the mid-1930s, possibly evolving into a functioning democracy. Germany might have become a peaceful European nation focused on rebuilding its economy and international reputation rather than pursuing aggressive expansion. Without Nazi ideology taking hold, there would be no systematic persecution of minorities, no Holocaust, and no drive for territorial conquest that would eventually engulf the world in war. The absence of World War II would have created a cascade of changes that would reshape every continent on Earth. Let's start with Europe, where the transformation would be most dramatic. Without the war's devastation, European colonial empires would likely have persisted much longer. The British Empire, French colonial holdings, and other European possessions might still exist today in some form. The economic drain and moral questioning that the war brought about were crucial factors in decolonization. Without these pressures, the process of independence for colonized nations would have been delayed by decades, if not longer. The Soviet Union presents one of the most intriguing questions in this scenario. Stalin's regime killed millions through forced collectivization, purges, and gulags throughout the 1930s, actions that occurred independently of World War II. However, without the war's unifying effect against a common enemy, internal resistance to Stalin's brutal policies might have grown stronger. The Soviet Union could have faced a different kind of internal collapse much earlier than it did historically. Alternatively, without the massive industrial mobilization required for war, Stalin might have continued his peacetime policies of rapid industrialization, potentially creating a different kind of totalitarian state. The technological landscape of our world would be dramatically altered. Many of the innovations we take for granted today were either invented during World War II or accelerated by wartime necessity. Jet engines, radar technology, early computers, and rocket technology all saw rapid development due to military needs. In our alternate timeline, these technologies might have emerged decades later, if at all. The space race, which was largely driven by rocket technology developed during the war, might never have occurred. Humans might still be earthbound today, with space exploration remaining in the realm of science fiction. Medical advances would have followed a completely different trajectory. The urgent need to treat wounded soldiers led to breakthrough developments in surgery, blood transfusions, antibiotics, and prosthetics. Penicillin, while discovered in 1928, wasn't mass-produced until wartime demand made it a priority. Without this urgency, life-saving medical treatments might have taken much longer to develop and distribute. The average human lifespan could be significantly shorter in our alternate world. Nuclear technology presents, perhaps, the most significant difference. The Manhattan Project was a direct response to fears that Nazi Germany was developing atomic weapons. Without World War II, nuclear research might have remained a purely academic pursuit for decades longer. This could mean that nuclear weapons never existed, fundamentally altering the balance of global power. However, it also means that nuclear power might have been delayed, potentially leaving the world more dependent on fossil fuels and facing earlier environmental crises. the United States would occupy a vastly different position in this alternate world. Without World War II, America might never have emerged as a global superpower. The war transformed the United States from an isolationist nation, still recovering from the Great Depression, into the world's dominant economic and military force. Without this transformation, America might have remained more inward-focused, possibly never developing the military-industrial complex that defined much of the 20th century. The dollar might never have become the world's reserve currency, and American cultural influence might be far more limited. This raises fascinating questions about what other nation might have filled the superpower vacuum. Would Britain have maintained its global dominance longer? Might a peaceful Germany have eventually emerged as Europe's leading power through economic means rather than military conquest? Or perhaps the Soviet Union, without the massive losses from the war, could have become an even more formidable global force. The Middle East would look completely different in our alternate timeline. The Holocaust was a crucial factor in generating international support for the establishment of Israel. Without this tragedy, the creation of Israel might never have occurred, or might have happened under completely different circumstances. The entire Arab-Israeli conflict, which has shaped Middle Eastern politics for decades, might not exist. Oil politics would also be different, as the strategic importance of Middle Eastern resources might not have been recognized as early. Without wartime demands for fuel, Asia would have experienced a radically different 20th century. Japan's expansion into China and Southeast Asia, which began before World War II but escalated during it, might have followed a different path. Without the war's pressures, Japan might have pursued economic expansion rather than military conquest. China might never have experienced the devastation of Japanese occupation, potentially allowing different political developments. Mao's Communist Party gained significant strength during the war by fighting Japanese forces. Without this opportunity, China's civil war might have ended differently, possibly preventing the establishment of Communist China altogether. India's independence movement would have faced different challenges without World War II. The war weakened Britain's hold on its colonies and created opportunities for independence movements. Without these conditions, British rule might have continued for decades longer. However, it's also possible that peaceful resistance movements might have eventually succeeded through different means, potentially leading to a less traumatic partition of India and Pakistan. The absence of World War II would have profoundly impacted social and cultural development worldwide. The war challenged traditional social hierarchies and accelerated movements for equality. Women's roles in society changed dramatically as they entered the workforce to replace men who went to fight. Without this catalyst, the women's rights movement might have progressed much more slowly. Similarly, the war's aftermath contributed to the civil rights movement in the United States. As African American veterans who had fought for freedom abroad demanded equality at home, educational and intellectual development would have followed different paths. Many European intellectuals fled Nazi persecution, bringing their knowledge to other countries, particularly the United States. This brain drain significantly advanced American universities and research institutions. Without this migration, intellectual centers might have remained more distributed globally, potentially slowing scientific progress in some areas, while retaining stronger academic traditions in others. The entertainment industry would be unrecognizable. Hollywood's golden age was partly fueled by the war, both through propaganda films and escapist entertainment. Many classic films and cultural works were directly inspired by the war experience. Without this influence, popular culture might have developed along completely different lines. The music industry, too, would be different. As genres like jazz and blues were influenced by the African American experience during and after the war, international organizations and laws would have evolved differently. The United Nations was created as a direct response to the failures that led to World War II. Without this catalyst, international cooperation might have developed more slowly or taken different forms. The concept of universal human rights, codified in response to wartime atrocities, might not have gained the same prominence. International law regarding war crimes and genocide might be far less developed. The Cold War, which defined global politics for nearly half a century, might never have occurred. The rivalry between the United States and Soviet Union was largely a product of their emergence as the two dominant powers after World War II. Without the war, neither nation might have achieved such global dominance, leading to a more multipolar world with different alliance structures and conflicts. Environmental consequences would also be significant. The massive industrial mobilization for war led to technological advances, but also increased pollution and resource consumption. Without this acceleration, environmental degradation might have occurred more slowly, potentially giving humanity more time to develop sustainable practices. However, it's also possible that without the rapid technological advancement spurred by war, we might lack the tools needed to address environmental challenges when they eventually arose. Looking at our alternate world today, we might see a planet where travel between continents is more difficult and expensive, where diseases that we've conquered still claim millions of lives, where space remains unexplored, and where the global economy operates under completely different rules. Some changes might be positive, perhaps fewer weapons of mass destruction, less environmental damage from rapid industrialization, or more diverse global power structures. Others might be tragic: continued oppression under colonial systems, slower medical advances, or different but equally devastating conflicts arising from different tensions. The ripple effects extend even to daily life. The internet, which has its roots in military research projects, might not exist. Global supply chains, partly developed to support wartime logistics, might be far more limited. The foods we eat, the medicines we take, and even the languages we speak could all be different in this alternate timeline. This thought experiment reveals how singular events can reshape the entire course of human civilization. World War II wasn't just a conflict between nations. It was a transformative force that accelerated technological progress, reshaped global power structures, challenged social norms, and fundamentally altered how we think about international relations, human rights, and our responsibilities to one another. As we contemplate this alternate history, we're reminded of how interconnected our world truly is, and how the actions of previous generations continue to shape our present reality. The absence of World War II would have created a world so different from our own that we can barely imagine it. Perhaps better in some ways, certainly worse in others, but undeniably foreign to everything we know about the modern world. The lesson isn't just about understanding history, but about recognizing how our current choices and actions will ripple through time, shaping the world that future generations will inherit. Every major event, every technological breakthrough, and every social movement builds upon what came before, creating the complex tapestry of human civilization that continues to evolve with each passing day.